abuelita, my father, my whole family, and Grand Canyon University made me the man I am today. Hi, Tia. I think I'm going to do Grand Canyon University's online program and get my master's degree.
Trata de llevar a tu familia en el corazón y lograrás lo que tú quieres. Estoy muy orgullosa de ti.
I have an announcement to make, so I'm going to get my master's degree online at Grand Canyon University.
Find your purpose at GCU.
The following paid program does not necessarily reflect the views of this station, its staff, or iHeartMedia.
An important message from the Attorneys for Freedom Law Firm. No attorney-client relationship has been created, and any and all information mentioned in this show may not be constituted as attorney-client privilege. The information shared does not constitute binding legal advice, nor should it be utilized in a court of law. If you have further questions or require legal representation, contact an attorney today. Aloha, and welcome to Law Talk Radio, brought to you by the Attorneys for Freedom Law Firm. When you or your loved one's freedom is on the line and you need an aggressive and experienced law firm to defend you, look no further than the Attorneys for Freedom Law Firm. We only offer straightforward, well-reasoned legal advice, and we always promise to represent our clients the way we would want to be represented ourselves. And now, enjoy this edition of Law Talk Radio, brought to you by the Attorneys for Freedom Law Firm, featuring attorney Marc J. Victor and your host, Rick Hamada, on News Radio 830 KHVH.
Thank you very much for the intro, and thank you very much for the beginning of another edition of Law Talk, presented by the Attorneys for Freedom. It is here on News Radio 830 KHVH every Saturday morning at this time. If you'd like to keep in touch with Law Talk, you can visit our website, khvhradio.com. On the podcast page, we have past programs and, of course, this one as well, appearing later on this weekend. Hey, it is a holiday weekend. It is a commemorative weekend, July 4th weekend. Can't think of a better way to get together with attorney Marc J. Victor. And I'm going to ask if attorney Marc J. Victor would kindly just put on some your earbuds for us here so we can minimize any type of echoing. And in the meantime, Mark, while we do that, I'm going to turn to John, who is with us in studio. And as always, we want to connect and get to know all of our friends that are with Attorneys for Freedom. And, brother, thank you very much for being with us. Good morning.
Thank you for having. Good morning. Aloha, Rick. Thank you for having us as always.
We're going to get together with Mark and our very special friend Kainoa momentarily. But one of the roles that you have with Attorneys for Freedom, of course, is with our Attorneys on Retainer program. Let's have a brief update and a brief chat once again about AOR and how that all works.
Thanks, Rick. Yes, the Attorneys on Retainer program allows us to give access to all the clients here on the island to top-notch quality attorneys, such as Mark and the whole Attorneys for Freedom law firm. With the Attorneys on Retainer program, you also are able to access free consultations with most strategy sessions and consults. That's covered under the program. And we offer that with the family plan that we're rolling out now with the ability to get a family plan going at $25 a month.
Mm-hmm. Now, with all that swirling, I always mention that it is not a matter of if, but when you will need legal representation. Briefly, and because we're going to have a great conversation with Mark and Kainoa, a special representation in regard to Second Amendment rights, and interested individuals would be able to use the services of AFF under AOR.
Yes, that's absolutely correct, Rick. I'm glad you brought that up because it's interesting. I was just on the phone most of last week. Every time court rulings come down regarding firearms, concerned responsible gun owners get worried about their protecting their rights to bear arms. With the Attorneys on Retainer program, especially if you're in a self-defense shooting and then you're need to use an attorney, our firm will cover that individual for free, zero cost for self-defense shootings. So we're excited about that. Mark is such a strong advocate for Second Amendment. but he's even more stronger for responsible gun owners, okay?
Mm-hmm.
That's why we're comfortable and our attorneys at the firm representing responsible gun owners for free in a self-defense shooting.
How do we contact? How do we connect?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's 808-278-6669 is my direct dial, and that way I can get you access, and you can also just log in to attorneysforfreedom.com and click on the red tab.
All right. Brother Jonathan Harris, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
We'll
Rick.
be hearing from you all throughout the series of Law Talk.
Wow.
And as promised, we go directly to Attorney Marc J. Victor, who is with us today. And Brother Marc, I wish you aloha as always, and it's good to talk again. And once again, we are going to make sure that all audio is taken care of with Attorney Marc J. Victor and News Radio 830 KHVH, and always being a part of the program, and every Saturday morning at this time. Going to take a very short break at 8:11 in the morning, and when we come back, Attorney Marc J. Victor opening the doors for us, along with Kainoa Kaku, President of the Hawaii Rifle Association. Stand by.
Law Talk Radio will return after these messages.
Let Engel Invokers Honolulu simplify your life.
Learn strategies on how a 1031 tax-deferred exchange can help increase your rental income and maximize deductions. The 1031 exchange is a powerful tool, and if utilized properly, it can change your life. Call 808-725-2000 to reserve your seat at our next educational seminar. Follow your dream home. Engel Invokers, Honolulu.
Are you frustrated with the constant bickering between the Republicans and the Democrats? Are you concerned about the ever-deepening divide in our country between groups of people who can't even seem to talk to each other anymore? Well, there's a new political movement growing throughout the world right now. The new Live and Let Live global peace movement, and it's attracting reasonable people who recognize that competent adults should be in charge of their own lives. We are inspiring people to be good humans. See liveandletlive.org for details and become part of the solution.
Hi, folks. Rick Hamada here. You know, I tell you all the time, the law touches your life every single day, whether you like it or not. It's not a question of if, it is a question of when you may need legal representation, legal advice, your own attorney. It can be stratospherically expensive. However, the Attorneys for Freedom, Attorneys on Retainer program could be the answer for you. For a small initiation, small monthly fee, you can get all the benefits of representation from the Attorneys for Freedom law firm via the Attorneys on Retainer program. And let me tell you this, I signed up. I am a member of AOR because I see not only the value, however, I want to have the confidence that I have the Attorneys for Freedom in my corner. You can too. Log on to Attorneys for Freedom, click on the red Attorneys on Retainer tab, and you, my friends, could have legal representation today.
Welcome back to Law Talk Radio, brought to you by the Attorneys for Freedom law firm.
And welcome back. Once again, here on News Radio 830 KHVH, there are a myriad of topics that we cover here on Law Talk, and primarily focused on you. And as Jonathan shared with us before our break, the Attorneys on Retainer is such a remarkable program that, as you heard, that I have actually become a member as well, because the representation, legal representation, is inevitable in any way, shape, or form. It could go all the way from just a consultation, a telephone call, all the way to full defense in a civil matter, including trials. So, heartily recommend, if you have a moment, log on to Attorneys for Freedom, click on the red tab, and you will be able to learn more and become a member of Attorneys on Retainer. Okay, it is 8:15 in the morning. Delighted you're with us here, and as always, connecting with attorney Marc J. Victor. And Marc, we always are appreciative that you're part of the program, and a very good morning.
Hey, Rick, good morning to you and everybody else. And, like I sometimes say, I believe in division of labor. I am a criminal defense attorney, not a tech guy. And so sometimes I, of course, run into technical difficulties, and this morning was one of those mornings. But we got it figured out now, so happy to be here.
Well, I'll tell you what, we are setting the table because we have a dear friend who's in studio. And I know, Marc, that after our conversation last week in regard to the SCOTUS decision, there's been rampant activity, both political and in the legislative branch and the general public. What would you like to do to update us with your perspective on what's transpired since we spoke last?
Well, I would just counsel everybody to just relax a little bit. The world's not going to end here. The vast majority of states already have ways for people to carry guns. I think it's 43 of the states already allow people to apply for licenses or permits, or in the case of Arizona, where you don't even need that, to carry a firearm outside the home. And no, we don't have all these tremendous problems. The sky's not falling. It's really only 7 states that are affected by this particular decision. Incidentally, those 7 states are states that are generally very high in violent crime, including gun crime. So the sky isn't falling here. All that's really decided here is the Heller case in 2008, which specifically held that an individual has a right to keep and bear arms. They didn't deal with the question in that case about whether bear arms means to take arms out of the home. All this decision does is say the obvious. To keep arms in your home and to bear them outside of the home is exactly what was meant by the Second Amendment at the time it was drafted and what it means today. So I would tell people to just relax. Yes, Hawaii law is going to have to change, but Hawaii law on this point has been wrong. Competent and safe, responsible adults should be able, like competent, safe, responsible adults in the other 43 states, should be able to bear arms outside the home, and they're going to be able to. This doesn't mean, and I want to be very clear here, doesn't mean that people can just take their gun outside right now. State of Hawaii still gets to require permits or licenses. They can still put in classes and do background checks and things of that nature, which I'm sure they will do. Of course, they cautioned in the case that if these type things become sort of onerous restrictions, they may be struck down. But there's an opportunity here for reasonableness, and I think there's no cause for people to get excited about this case.
Talking with attorney Marc J. Victor on Attorneys for Freedom, and once again, great movement within the Second Amendment here at home. And as a matter of fact, there was a local decision made as well since SCOTUS, and we'll cover that. But I'd like to introduce once again, he is Kainoa Kaku, president of the Hawaii Rifle Association. And once again, brother, it is a delight to have you in studio. Good morning.
Good morning. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. Well, you're on with attorney Marc J. Victor, and we all three have spent time together in the past. Kainoa, would you mind your take on where we are today?
Well, last week felt like Christmas morning, 2 days in a row. And like you just said, the local decision, basically there was, Bruin was the umbrella. And there were a number of cases below it, including assault weapon bans, magazine bans, so on and so forth, including the Young decision, that all are remanded back to the lower courts for them to decide based on the decision with Bruin. So some people are saying, oh, these cases aren't won yet. They're won. It just needs to go through the actual motions. And as we're seeing in New York with what they're trying to do, banning guns now just everywhere they possibly can, including Times Square, just like they did with tasers in Hawaii. So, it's not like we don't know what their tactics are. We know exactly what they're going to do, but we're not going to give up, and we're going to do everything we can, fight tooth and nail, and introduce, lawsuit after lawsuit until we have our rights completely fulfilled.
Marc, where do you take us from there?
Well, this is the beginning of lots of litigation here, right? Because the people on the other side who simply don't accept that the Constitution specifically allows individuals, responsible, competent individuals, the right to keep and bear arms. They're going to completely do everything that they can to keep things the way they are. So it will be lawsuit after lawsuit, unfortunately. It would be nice if the powers that be look at this decision and say, look, the Supreme Court has spoken. This is what the Second Amendment means. And they would fashion reasonable restrictions like they have in many of the other 47 states and allow the people of Hawaii to not have to go through all this litigation. Just allow them reasonable, like I said, background checks, maybe even a class is going to be fine here. That's not the end of the world. And then people can keep and bear arms. Now, the court still specifically said this doesn't overthrow every restriction on firearms ownership or possession. There are still sensitive places like courthouses and schools that people may not be allowed to carry firearms. There's still restrictions on background checks in terms of who can have a firearm. This doesn't change anything about who's a prohibited possessor under federal law. And so there's still going to be restrictions here that are going to apply. And so, like I'm saying, this is a very important case. It is, in some sense, landmark. I think the most important thing about this case from people who follow the law isn't the decision. The decision is predictable, right? We've been talking about this since the first time Kainoa and I were on. We've been talking and predicting that this case would go this way. So nobody should be surprised about that. But what's interesting about this case is if you read it carefully, you'll see what they decided here was something rather significant to get rid of this sort of balancing test they call means-ends scrutiny. So they got rid of, and I talk about this a lot, the idea that we apply strict scrutiny, intermediate scrutiny, or minimum scrutiny to different aspects of constitutional rights. Well, what they said in this case, this is, I think, a very big statement, is, look, we're doing away with that entire mess. There is no more step 2 or means-ends testing here. And this is just a function of what did they mean at the time they wrote the Second Amendment. And, of course, it's not even so clear what they meant at that time because, as legal scholars know, the Second Amendment came through in 1789, but the 14th Amendment, which is the mechanism that was used to incorporate, or said another way, to make those amendments applicable to the states, that didn't happen until 1868. So as Justice Barrett noted, it's not so clear in terms of whether we're trying to get the understanding at the time it was written, 1781, or at the time it was made applicable to the states, 1868. All this is going to have to be hashed out. And look, this isn't going to put lawyers out of business. Guys like me and other lawyers who litigate Second Amendment questions, this is really just the beginning of the fight. But the big picture issues in terms of what the Second Amendment means, that's been settled in the right way, in my opinion.
Kainoa?
Yep. He talked for so long, I forgot what we were even talking about. But yeah, it's a waiting game at this point. We need to wait. We need to wait to see what the legislature is going to do. I mean, every single police chief on every island could just decide to issue permits right now. And this is something that Andrew talked about with the chief of police just last week, right? That it's completely within their power. He said, no, it's the attorney general, and the attorney general just said in Young that it's up to the police chiefs to do it. So they're just playing ping pong with responsibility. And again, they could end it today. They could decide today, each prospective police chief on every island with a multitude of differing laws or requirements to get your concealed carry, they could just approve you if they wanted to. So we need a pressure. We need to make calls to our legislators. We need to make calls to the police station, and tell them that we need the ability to defend ourselves because they're not making it any safer for us out there.
So what would be that specific message? That specific what the request would be?
So, I mean, again, the proof is in the pudding. You look at states, you look at countries that have radically changed their laws, like Brazil. Brazil's a fantastic example of what happens when you change laws. The current president struck down about 42 gun laws after taking office in the last couple of years. And in just 2 to 3 years, they've seen a 34% decrease in murder rate. So they're at like a 27.8 per 100,000. To reference the United States, we're about 5. So 5 murders per 100,000 people that live here. So they went from that 27.8% murder rate, 34% reduction. And the only thing that changed was letting citizens concealed carry or open carry, because prior to this president taking over, only police officers could carry firearms. One, the criminals, obviously.
8:25 in the morning, Saturday, and it is Law Talk with the Attorneys for Freedom, featuring attorney Marc J. Victor. Marc, can you expand on some of what Kainoa had mentioned? There's a lot of attention here at home about individuals feeling empowered that now they can carry, and you both have referenced that there are still restrictions.
Well, yes. There's, of course, technically speaking, the cases were remanded. So the lower courts from the Supreme Court are going to have to issue opinions consistent with the Supreme Court. But as Kainoa points out, the issue is one right now. This is just a formality. But I think what's important to really understand is, in all of these states, there were mechanisms to allow people to carry firearms outside the home. In 43 of the states, these are what we call shall issue states. So what that meant is the person who makes the decision must issue the permit and give permission for people to carry the firearm outside unless there's one of the sort of enumerated categories, right? Somebody's a prohibited possessor, there's a competency issue, something like that was going on, then they could deny. But then there were the 7 states that were the may issue. And this is really the issue that came out of the New York case, because in New York, people would say, hey, look, I want my permit to carry my firearm outside. And the question would be, well, why? And the answer would be, well, because I want to defend myself. And the answer back routinely was, sorry, that's not good enough. You have to show something else. So that discretion is really what's taken away now. There are no more may issue states after this opinion, and people are going to get to carry outside. It's not clear. Of course, the case doesn't talk about whether you're going to get to carry outside open or concealed or either. That'll be up to states to decide, and then there'll be further litigation on that. But I feel pretty confident that the court is not going to say that you have a right to carry concealed outside of the home. I think that's probably an issue that they're not going to be able to find something in the historical analysis, although many states allow it right now, like Arizona. You don't even need a permit. You can, if you're a resident of this state and you're not a prohibited possessor, you can conceal or open carry. You don't need anybody's permission for either.
So, Kainoa, are there any friends in the legislative process, legislatively, city, county, big square building, that will take this decision and support the transition, as Marc described, as from a may to a shall? Are there any supporters in any body?
I would really hope so. They're few and far between. I mean, there's a reason why every single gun bill that is proposed in legislature doesn't get passed, and that's because there's still reasonable people that sit on there. But just like Marc said, the method of carry is not decided. And this was actually talked about in Peruta versus San Diego, which is what our Baker versus Kealoha was tied into. And that was specifically for concealed carry. And why that lost, according to the court that sat at the time, was that you cannot demand a specific way to carry your firearm. You cannot say, you will let me carry concealed. I don't agree with that, obviously, but this is what the court decided in San Diego versus Peruta, which is why George Young, we felt, even without the Bruin, even if Bruin didn't exist, we felt that George Young had a really good chance of winning, because if they're going to deny us the ability to carry concealed, well, then you need to let us carry open, because they need to provide a method of carry. Whether it might not be the method we want, they need to provide that method, which is why we knew George Young would win. So when George Young is decided by the lower court, the 9th District, they're going to have to issue permits, and it's up to them to start deciding what they're going to issue, because they already said, oh, we don't want to issue concealed carry. Okay, fine. Then if you want everyone carrying guns open on their hips, and if that's the image you want of Hawaii, that's fine with us. I mean, I personally don't prefer it. Again, I cannot stress how much I despise open carry and would rather have concealed carry. But I'm going to take whatever they give me, and I'm going to teach people how to do the same.
Tell us how people can connect with HRA.
Right, you can hit us up at the range. We're there twice a month, the 2nd and 4th Sundays of each month. You can see our calendar at HawaiiRifleAssociation.org. We're also on Facebook and Instagram and I think Twitter.
We're going to continue the conversation. Attorney Marc J. Victor, of course, he Attorneys for Freedom on Law Talk. And getting back with Marc, getting back with Kainoa. Stand by, folks. There's a whole lot more right after this. It's 8:30.
Law Talk Radio will return after these messages.
Let Engel Invokers Honolulu simplify your life.
Learn strategies on how a 1031 tax-deferred exchange can help increase your rental income and maximize deductions. The 1031 exchange is a powerful tool, and if utilized properly, it can change your life. Call 808-725-2000 to reserve your seat at our next educational seminar. Follow your dream home. Engel Invokers Honolulu.
Have you or someone you know been offended at a comedy show recently? Have you had your feelings hurt? Did you disagree with the comedian? If so, you may be entitled to compensation.
Really? Because I'd like to speak to the manager.
Actually, no. This is Comedy you moron. Join us for Tuesday Night Comedy inside the Slack Key Lounge at Hawaiian Brian's, 1680 Kapiolani Boulevard, second floor behind 24 Hour Fitness. Doors open at 7, show starts at 7:30 for a featured show followed by open mic comedy.
But the open mic is where they hurt my feelings.
Don't lose your hair, G.I. Jane. Visit ComedyUHI.com.
This is attorney Marc J. Victor with the Attorneys for Freedom Law Firm. Our law firm is well known for zealously representing people charged with serious crimes. But did you know we also represent people in both personal injury and civil rights matters? If you've been seriously injured in an accident or as a result of a civil rights violation, we'd be happy to discuss your case with you. No charge for the meeting and no fee unless we recover money damages for you. Located in Bishop Square or online at attorneysforfreedom.com.
Welcome back to Law Talk Radio, brought to you by the Attorneys for Freedom Law Firm.
Welcome back once again. It is this edition of Law Talk here on News Radio 830 KHVH with the Attorneys for Freedom, featuring Marc J. Victor, attorney at law, special guest Kainoa Kaku, who is the president of the Hawaii Rifle Association. Brother Marc, this is a very, as you articulated earlier, it is a defining moment. However, there seems to be confusion amongst the general public as to exactly what they are now able to do because it is such a profound decision. What would you counsel legal gun owners of what to do next and how to remain involved?
Yeah, I think that what they should not do is just take their firearm outside and start carrying. I think that's a fast way to get yourself in trouble. I think that we're going to have to wait a little bit of time to get to let the legislature make the conditions under which people can obtain a permit or a license to take the firearm outside. So that process is still going to happen. You know, there was a reference in the case, I forget which justice it was, that talked about, you know, if they start having these long delays, or you could imagine someone in Hawaii on the wrong side of this issue gets the idea that I know we'll make it a $20,000 fee to get the license to carry the firearm outside or something crazy like that. There'll still be litigation. So a lot of this is going to depend on whether the elected officials take the position that the court has spoken. This is now the meaning of the Second Amendment. I've taken an oath to follow the Constitution, therefore let's move forward. Or if they're going to say, like so many are saying with the related abortion decision, we don't like this, it's an activist court and this, that, and the next thing, and we're going to try to change things and get the law changed and work around. I hope they don't take that position. But if they do take that position, look, we're standing by to litigate these cases. This is going to happen. The Supreme Court has decided there are going to be competent adults walking the streets of Honolulu with firearms. Now, exactly what firearms will be permitted, whether, as Kainoa pointed, whether they'll have to conceal them or open carry them, these are things we don't know. Whether they'll have to take a class, what will be the cost, so many unanswered questions. But this is going to happen. But, you know, I've been speaking to the gun community now for about 25 years, and I've been saying for quite a while, this is by far the most pro-Second Amendment Supreme Court we have ever had. So in terms of things that I worry about, the Second Amendment is no longer the top of that list. I think we're in pretty good shape. The battles will still need to be fought, and I think people should be standing by to apply for permits. If things don't get changed quickly, then I think that we need to start bringing cases, maybe in federal court, to start, pushing things along. But look, let's go into it with an open mind. Let's take the position that the legislature will act appropriately, maybe for once, and let's see what happens. And if they don't, then we have to go back to the court. Hopefully they'll want to avoid all this litigation, but if not, that's why we're here.
From a legislative standpoint, Kainoa, hearkening back to local history, if you will, what do you anticipate that with the current iteration of this legislature, those controls, restrictions, requirements, I mean, the invocation of a $20,000 fee in order to, that may not be too far out of line with what the possibilities are. What do you portend?
Well, I would tell people not to hold their breath. If you've applied for your concealed or open carry permit, please do not hold your breath. You will die. But they've already tried to pass this legislation. We've talked about it, previously. Just this last year, or we'll go back a little bit. 2 years ago, they wanted to make, if you were applying for a concealed carry permit, you would have had to take a training class within 6 months of applying for that permit. And they included the handgun safety basic NRA course in that. So that's $125 to $150 that you take every single year, because these permits would have only lasted for a year. And then you would have had to pay $100 just to apply for the permit. So that wasn't even guaranteeing that you actually get the license. So that's $250 out of your pocket every single year. And we see similar things like this, as we've talked about Illinois in the past, right? $450 for a concealed carry permit. So we fully expect them to, we expect them to do it. God, I hope they don't. I really hope that they just give us a chance. They take the opportunity to come out and meet us and see who we actually are. Because the problem that these people make is they conflate gun owners with criminals. To them, we're the same person, and it's obviously not the case. And in states like Hawaii, we're guilty, and we need to prove ourselves innocent to obtain these concealed carry or open carry permits, which is the good cause and means and whatever. And it's really insidious. That's not how law works, right? You're innocent until proven guilty, but they see all of us as guilty for simply owning a gun, despite all the background checks and hoops we have to jump through just to get a gun in Hawaii.
Right. So, Mark, then what are we looking at? You referred that taking legal action would be a possibility and a probability. But what would kick in for a legal challenge? What would have to be said or not done on behalf of citizens, expediency, swiftness, and also content of any legislation forthcoming on this, Mark?
Well, we're sort of in an uncharted territory here. I can't tell you exactly, Rick, but, if it's 6 months from now and still there are no laws that are on the books in terms of how you get your permit, then that's something. In fact, I would say even probably 3 months from now, we start bringing lawsuits if that's the case. Also, we're going to have to look at the requirements, the hoops that people are going to have to jump through. Like I said, and of course I threw that number, $20,000, just out there, but I threw that out there as an illustration of one of the many things that people who are anti-gun could do. But, there's one thing that Kainoa said that it triggered in my head something that I wish I could talk to the entire gun community right now and say, look, we're going to have an opportunity right here to demonstrate what peaceful, competent, responsible gun ownership looks like. And as I say in my talks, don't be an idiot with a gun, right? Because that the people on the other side of this issue are going to take any opportunity, right? Any negligent discharge, any accident, any misuse of a firearm to make the point that, gun owners are bad. And what Kainoa said really makes a lot of sense, because the other side thinks people who own guns are all criminals. So this opens up a door for me to do what I like to do, which is to talk about not just rights of firearms owners, but responsibilities of firearms owners. Look, ignorance of the law here is absolutely no excuse. That you don't know about the little contours of self-defense law isn't going to save you if you act inappropriately with a firearm. You have to know when you can pull it out and when you can't. You have to understand things like using the least amount of force that's necessary to repel the attack. Hawaii has some different types of rules, like There is a duty to retreat in Hawaii. You have to understand under what circumstances that you're required to retreat and when you're not. So we, as responsible gun owners, need to get together and organize and start putting together plans to educate the people who plan to keep and bear arms and take them outside. So we should start thinking about that right now. And let's be an example for the people who are anti-gun to say, look, here's how many responsible gun owners we now have with permits carrying them outside, and we have not had any problems. And by the way, the press will not seize on the self-defense incidents. We need to talk about them. So the first time somebody pulls out a firearm in Hawaii and appropriately uses it to defend themselves, the press, it'll be crickets in the press on that, but we need to talk about it so people understand every year there are far more good incidents, self-defense justified incidents with firearms than bad, evil uses of firearms.
News Radio 830 KHVH, Attorneys for Freedom, and this is Law Talk with attorney Marc J. Victor and good friend, good man. He is Kainoa Kaku, the Hawaii Rifle Association. Given all that we've chatted about so far, Kainoa, what is the role of the HRA and source of information that people can find, utilize when conversing about this?
Yeah, I mean, the HRA has always been about protecting rights, expanding gun rights, and training and education. And that's really my focus. Talk about our friends at Hawaii Firearms Coalition. They've done such a good job with the legislature, which is fantastic because I can't stand that. Not even for like a millisecond. I just hate doing that stuff. And what I love to do is I like to train and educate, teach people how to safely and effectively and responsibly use their firearms for self-defense. And that's what I live for, really. In this conversation, I had a call on the morning program earlier this week regarding the concealed carry and the inevitability in some way, shape, or form. Caller said, listen, I'm uncomfortable, and he's a supporter of 2A, but I'm uncomfortable. I don't think I'm prepared. I'm ready that if I have a firearm, a situation arises, that I'll have the expertise in utilizing and judgment call in utilizing as well. He's pursuing and perhaps even intimating that a requirement, a mandate of some sort of training regimen would be necessary. How would you respond to those comments? So I completely disagree with mandatory training. I cannot say that enough. I also disagree with proficiency tests when it comes to concealed carry. But I mean, if that's something that the state of Hawaii wanted to do, I can understand. I don't agree with it, but I can understand. And that's a really quick way to determine who should be carrying guns on and off the street. Give us HPD's tests, because I can pass that thing blindfolded with one hand. So if you want to give us proficiency tests, the people that know how to shoot and know how to carry and know how to responsibly and effectively use their firearms, they're going to pass whatever test you put in front of us. And if that's what it's going to take, I'm willing to do it. Again, for all of my fellow gun nuts, I do not agree with mandatory training. I think you should get training. I think you should come out to our classes. They're not expensive. We charge $15. That's nothing. You go take an actual training course, you're spending $250 at least. So learn. Educate yourself. Take the time and effort to train yourself how to use your firearm properly. Because I think that if you want to carry a gun for self-defense, you should know how to use it. But I don't think that you need to be a Navy SEAL in order to shoot someone 3 feet in front of you that's trying to stab you to death. I don't think that's the case, and that's why I disagree with training and proficiency tests. Mark, is there any precedent around the country in regard to this topic of mandatory training as a requirement?
Rick, I'm not aware of anything that would constitutionally prohibit a requirement by the state of Hawaii, as long as it's a reasonable requirement, right? Because I could imagine, they say, well, you need 3 years of training in order to carry your handgun outside the home. Okay, that's probably going to, certainly I would think that would be struck down. But there's probably a position in there, some reasonable amount of training, maybe a day or half-day course or something like that I think will pass constitutional muster, so long as the cost of it is not prohibitive. And so the Constitution, I don't believe, is going to take a position that says you shouldn't do that. Now, this will be a political question, right? Whether people will agree with Kainoa and say, look, there should be no testing whatsoever, no proficiency, no education to take a firearm, which is what the case is in Arizona right now. But, I counsel, and I think Kainoa would as well, everybody who is going to take a firearm outside the home. And there's really two components to this. Number one, you got to get your head around what the law is, what the law allows. People ask me questions all the time. Mark, if somebody comes in my house, can I shoot them? And I say, not necessarily. I mean, there are more facts that we need to know about. It's just not that simple. So you got to get your brain around self-defense law, run through some hypothetical scenarios, get comfortable with what you can do and what you can't do. I like to tell people that, look, imagine you are going to be prosecuted if you pull your firearm out. The question in my mind is, if you don't pull your firearm out, is what's going to happen worse than being prosecuted? If it is, then pull your firearm out. That leaves you with, I'm going to be dead, I'm going to suffer a serious physical injury, somebody I love is going to be put in a position like that. If that's the case, I would rather be prosecuted, so pull out your firearm. The second component is proficiency. Get yourself to the range, understand how to use your firearm, make sure you're hitting what you're aiming at, know the rules of safe firearms handling. All guns are loaded at all time. It drives me crazy when I see people recklessly handling a firearm because they're assuming it's unloaded. Maybe it is, but that's not the way we treat firearms. Make sure you're safe at storing the thing. So, again, we need to switch now, the we meaning the pro-Second Amendment, pro-gun people, to really trying to get the people who are carrying firearms on the streets of Hawaii, make sure they're responsible, competent, so we don't look like a bunch of idiots. It only takes a few for the other side to get up and start yelling and screaming and saying, look, here's what happened, because now we're letting people keep and bear arms.
We're delighted that we're together on this Saturday morning. Absolutely informative, educational, and hopefully empowering for folks that are dialed in today. It is Law Talk with the Attorneys for Freedom, featuring attorney Marc J. Victor and our good friend Kainoa Kaku today, who is president of the Hawaii Rifle Association. Be a part of the program, 521-8383 in the remaining moments that we have, but you are once again dialed in together.
Law Talk Radio will return after these messages.
This week's edition of Strange Crimes is brought to you by the Attorneys for Freedom Law Firm. Legal issues are a part of life, and lawyers are expensive. With their new Attorneys on Retainer program, you can have a trusted law firm on retainer for only $25 a month. Get the peace of mind you deserve. Visit online at attorneysforfreedom.com. On this week's edition of Strange Crimes, we have a story of the Vermont State Police Department showing up to a residence to arrest the homeowner's son, only to be greeted by an excavator. On June 12th, 2 state troopers arrived at Wayne Tallman's home in Hardwick to arrest Brandon Tallman, his 24-year-old son, on assault and burglary charges stemming from an incident prior. Well, things didn't go very smoothly. Dashcam video shows the troopers wrestling with Brandon and his mother in the driveway as an excavator operated by Wayne moves towards them. The bucket then swings over the top of the police SUV and moves forward in the direction of the officers, with the bucket continuing to swing. Wayne Tallman was eventually arrested for aggravated assault on a protected official, resisting arrest, impeding an officer, and reckless endangerment. His son was also arrested on his original charges. And that's this week's edition of Strange Crimes.
Hi, folks. Rick Hamada here. I tell you all the time, the law touches your life every single day, whether you like it or not. It's not a question of if, it is a question of when you may need legal representation, legal advice, your own attorney. It can be stratospherically expensive. However, the Attorneys for Freedom, Attorneys on Retainer program could be the answer for you. For a small initiation, small monthly fee, you can get all the benefits of representation from the Attorneys for Freedom Law Firm via the Attorneys on Retainer program. And let me tell you this, I signed up. I am a member of AOR because I see not only the value, however, I want to have the confidence that I have the Attorneys for Freedom in my corner. You can too. Log on to Attorneys for Freedom, click on the red Attorneys on Retainer tab, and you, my friends, could have legal representation today.
Let Engel Invokers Honolulu simplify your life.
Learn strategies on how a 1031 tax-deferred exchange can help increase your rental income and maximize deductions. The 1031 exchange is a powerful tool, and if utilized properly, it can change your life. Call 808-725-2000 to reserve your seat at our next educational seminar. Follow your dream home. Engel Invokers Honolulu.
Are you frustrated with the constant bickering between the Republicans and the Democrats? Are you concerned about the ever-deepening divide in our country between groups of people who can't even seem to talk to each other anymore? Well, there's a new political movement growing throughout the world right now. The new Live and Let Live global peace movement, and it's attracting reasonable people who recognize that competent adults should be in charge of their own lives. We are inspiring people to be good humans. See liveandletlive.org for details and become part of the solution.
Welcome back to Law Talk Radio, brought to you by the Attorneys for Freedom Law Firm.
And indeed, welcome back. It's good to be with you in the remaining moments that we have. Law Talk with the Attorneys for Freedom, featuring attorney Marc J. Victor and special guest today, Kainoa Kaku, President of the Hawaii Rifle Association. For both gentlemen, I'm just going to make a statement, and I'd love to get both of your takes. The Supreme Court of the United States is nothing but a packed court by Donald Trump. Because of his actions, we're now facing the removal of rights of American citizens with Roe v. Wade and endangering the general public by now allowing a flood of firearms to be in the hands of individuals you never know. You could be at the grocery store and some guy's packing heat, and I feel unsafe. I think it's wrong. I think it's illegal. These justices who support this, they should be impeached immediately. What has happened to our country? Marc J. Victor.
Well, some of this is defensible. The part about the court being packed by Donald Trump, I mean, to some regard, this is true. He just put 3 justices on there. He was absolutely entitled to do that. That's the way our system works. That did dramatically change the makeup of the court. But this concept of removing rights, I think, is really unfair. There's much about the Constitution that needs to be interpreted. Really, all of it needs to be interpreted. And so when we're drifting sort of into the abortion decision here, but really what the court said, you might disagree with them without finding that what they said was unreasonable, because it's true. The word privacy doesn't appear anywhere in the Constitution. And the reason I bring that up is because the right to abortion was derived from this right to privacy. So if there's no right to privacy, then there's no right to abortion in the Constitution. And that is one way you could read the Constitution. On the other hand, the Constitution very explicitly says in the 9th Amendment that there are unenumerated rights. So it doesn't really end the discussion. It's just a matter of where you want to go, what your construction is, keeping in mind that the abortion decision didn't make any abortions illegal. The abortion decision really just let the states make the call. So I don't agree with that. Regarding the issue of someone who doesn't feel safe about with people keeping and bearing arms, I would say to that person, well, sorry, competent, responsible adults have every right under our Constitution, specifically the Second Amendment, to keep and bear arms. That's exactly what the court found. This one didn't require a lot of imagination, nor did they use a lot of imagination. In fact, the Heller decision back in 2008 did a very extensive review of what was happening historically during the time of the adoption of the Second Amendment, and that's what they said in this case out of New York. Basically, look, we need to do a historical analysis. I think it's pretty clear that guns were allowed at the founding of our nation. So there's nothing radical that comes out of this Second Amendment decision at all. This is somebody who just simply doesn't like the idea that other competent, responsible adults can keep and bear arms. I would cite such person to places where people can keep and bear arms, like Arizona, that do not have higher rates of gun violence than places like Illinois that have very strict gun laws and also very high rates of gun violence. So it's certainly not a correlation at all.
Kainoa, I'd love to get your take.
Yeah, I think that our school system has done a very poor job of teaching civics over the last couple of decades. But people need to understand that you do not live in a democracy. This is a constitutional republic, and all Roe v. Wade did was give power back to the states. So every state will decide what it wants to do. Nothing will change in Hawaii, California, New York. But I think the really important thing about this is it'll keep red states red and keep blue states blue, and that way we'll actually have a chance of winning elections for the presidency, which obviously was a pretty big deal considering Donald Trump got three choices at Supreme Court justices. With the concealed carry thing, again, repeatedly, the proof is in the pudding. Look at places like Brazil, where crime just dramatically decreased after they got rid of the roadblocks and let people carry guns. And you look at gun-friendly states, and you'll see the same thing there. It's only in these high population density inner cities where the vast majority of these violent gun crimes take place. And then, of course, there's the offshoots of mass shootings and whatnot. And we can have a separate discussion about what to do to make that less horrible than it's obviously going to be. But generally speaking, the people on the other side of the aisle don't even want to have that conversation. I come from a family of teachers. I am a teacher, for God's sake. So I take that very seriously. And the fact that, tomorrow you could have a guy like me on campus carrying with all the training and attitude that I have, and you don't want to take advantage of that is just mind-boggling to me. But yeah, don't be scared, guys. We're just like you, but more American? I don't
On that note, my goodness.
I just love freedom, man. I just love freedom. Leave me alone. That's all I want.
Tell us how to connect with HRA before we go.
HawaiiRifleAssociation.org. Check us out. We have our calendar up there. You can sign up for membership, meet us down at the range. And I also wanted to mention that the Hawaii Firearms Coalition is going to be having an event tonight, 7 p.m. You can on Zoom with Alan Beck, who was the attorney for George Young, and they'll be talking more about this. So if you want to find out more about the repercussions of the Supreme Court decision, how it's going to pan out, what are the steps moving forward, please go check that out. So it's on their Facebook. I believe it's on their website as well.
Kainoa, thank you so very much as always.
Thank
really
you.
Appreciate the time. And Attorney Marc J. Victor, we're in the waning moments. Love to turn it over to you for a brief final thought, please.
Yeah, first thing I wanted to mention is we're going to have a discussion here in Hawaii about whether concealed or whether open carry outside. And I would just caution people, this doesn't make a heck of a lot of difference. Really what matters is what is in the mind and heart of the person who is carrying the firearm. There's no evidence to believe that whether you carry concealed or open changes your dangerousness. But I would just finish by saying, look, if people are interested and I'm happy to talk to groups about firearm safety. But if they're interested in bringing lawsuits on this point, we are not shy about suing the government. So check out attorneysforfreedom.com. We didn't talk too much about live and let live, but if you're frustrated with the left and frustrated with the right, and you really do love freedom, Live and Let Live is the only show in town. Check it out at liveandletlive.org.
Attorney Marc J. Victor, mahalo plenty, and thanks to all of our friends dialed in as well for this edition of Law Talk, the Attorneys for Freedom. My name is Rick Hamada. It's always a pleasure to be with you, and we will see you next time.
Mahalo for joining us on Law Talk Radio, brought to you by the Attorneys for Freedom Law Firm. If you have further questions or require representation for a legal matter, please visit us at attorneysforfreedom.com.
Our border is under attack. Criminals, drug cartels, and human trafficking. Biden's border crisis has become Arizona's crisis. The police are Arizona's only line of defense. They've got our backs every time. And when it comes to electing Arizona's next top cop, they're taking a stand. Law enforcement groups across the state have endorsed Rodney Glassman for Attorney General because Rodney has their backs, saying Glassman will keep our citizens safe, uphold the rights of police officers, and that Rodney's committed to the rule of law. Glassman is an Air Force JAG prosecutor and a Trump conservative who will secure our border and get illegal drugs off our streets. He is the only candidate endorsed by law enforcement across Arizona because he'll stand with them every time. Rodney Glassman has earned their support, and he deserves our vote in the Republican primary.
Paid for by Glassman for Attorney General, authorized by Rodney Glassman.